Right, so today we'll be testing the RX 6600 XT in Forspoken. Now, I know that this is the demo, but as far as I can determine, there's no real performance difference between the demo and the full game. And today we're pairing this GPU with a 12400F CPU from Intel, and we've also got 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 MHz CL16 memory. Now, so far from my testing, the game seems to be a little bit unoptimized, and that sentiment has been agreed upon by most other YouTubers that I've seen. But let's see how it goes. So we've got the low image quality preset here at the moment, and we are starting at 1080p. I don't think we'll be able to increase the resolution. I'll show you why in a little bit. Just the image quality preset, if you select low, you can't really change much, right? So you can't change the FSR, anything. You have to go into custom, and then these options become available, right? So what we'll do is we'll start off with the low setting, right? And we'll go into game. You'll see here that there's literally no loading times, which is pretty good to see. That's due to direct storage, and we're in, right? So I'm not going to start the benchmark run just yet. I'm just going to get to the start of our mission here, and we'll actually test the low preset without FSR to see how it goes. All right, we're pretty much at the start here, so let's just go to settings. We'll make this custom, and I just want you to note the background there. It's blurred at the moment, but just have a look at the trees there, pretty much in the middle of the screen. Once we disable FSR, just look at the blurriness of the trees, how much it actually changes, right? So now it's still blurry, but it's not as pixelated. As you increase the FSR, it becomes very pixelated. Now, this is actually a very good example of FSR. It does upscale from a lower internal resolution. Obviously, the effects in game is not really as bad as can be seen in this blurry image here, but it gives you a good idea of how it actually works. All right, so what we'll do is we've got the low preset, but we've just disabled FSR because the 6600 XT is actually a very, very good 1080p GPU, according to my own videos. All right, let's see what happens in this game. All right, I'm just going to reset the numbers there, and so far it's looking okay. I mean, we are sure, we're on the low preset, and we are getting 80 frames per second, right? It's definitely not terrible, but I think once we start increasing the graphical settings a little bit, the talking is a little bit annoying. Mine as well, but mostly this bracelet, it keeps on talking to you. Not so sure about the graphics of this game. It's not terrible, but definitely not 2023 AAA title material. That's just my opinion. I'm testing the demo because I don't want to spend 85 US dollars on a game that I might not play, and that's what it costs here in my region. Unfortunately, it's quite expensive, but if some of you or any of you want to donate the game to me so that I can test it further, then just hit me up. I'll send you my Steam ID. All right, on a more serious note, you can see that we are dropping from 80 frames per second to below 60 when there's foliage. This looks like an angry reindeer. All right, so that's pretty much our run for 1080p, right? So we had an average of 79 frames per second, 1% layers of 54, and 0.1% layers of 46. I must admit, there's a very, very little stuttering. I've actually tested this on 3 systems so far. The stuttering is almost non-existent. Not sure if it's a direct result of direct storage because it uses the GPU to decompress assets and not the CPU. So it would make sense that there's less load on the CPU. All right, let's see what happens if we up the graphical settings. All right, and we're back, and now I've just set it to standard, the quality preset, and this disables FSR on its own, and the rest of the settings are also on standard. So let's see how this one goes. I'm not too sure we'll be able to maintain 60 frames per second here. In this little valley here, we do, sorry about the tearing, it's my capture card. It actually does reflect in the recording. It's a little bit annoying. I say a little bit too much. So now we are still getting about 60 frames per second, which is not terrible. But remember, this is now 1080p standard, not even high or ultra. And no ray tracing has been enabled. So I know that this benchmark run is maybe not indicative of actual gameplay, because once we get out of this valley, the frame rate does drop quite a lot. Almost said a little bit there, but it drops quite a lot, and most of your gameplay actually happens in this vast open space here. And here you can see that we dropped from 60 to in the 40s. Personally, to me, that's unacceptable. It's a AAA title from Square Enix. What this reminds me of is actually when Just Cause 4 just released. That game was a stuttering mess, and I think it was not sure what engine they were using for that one, or what's the name of that engine, but I actually uninstalled Just Cause 4 and just started playing Just Cause 3 again. Not that Just Cause 3 was better, it's just it was not as bad. There we go, that's the button I wanted to press. Now this looks pretty cool, but don't do this too often. As you see, your frame rate drops down into the lower 40s. But once again, you can see that our 1% lows and 0.1% lows are actually pretty respectable when compared to the average. And that just means that there's very little stuttering, if at all. If you have a look at the frame time graph at the bottom, you can see that it is pretty smooth. Obviously, it goes up and down, but there's not a lot of spikes. Alright, so our average here was 56 frames per second with the 1% lows of 41 and 0.1% lows of 39. Now let's try the high preset. Right, here we are on the high preset. Alright, let's reset the numbers here, and now we are not seeing 60 FPS at all. Let's see what happens once we start fighting. Dropping down into the low 50s there. Not impressed. It's definitely not this GPU's fault. This RX 6600 XT is actually pretty impressive for its price. This game is just not optimized for PC. I tested this on my RTX 3080 as well, and I found the performance wanting. It's even worse than the next gen update for The Witcher 3, if that's possible. Now, this game will probably improve quite a bit with patches and updates, but as it stands now, for the price of, well, the recommended retail price is $70. As I said, we don't get that for $70. We get it for $85, and I'm not spending that much money on this game. So when we get outside of the valley into the foliage, we're seeing similar results as at medium, and dropping down into the low 40s here. And that bracelet is really annoying. I know that there's a setting that you can toggle to make it talk less. A lot of people complain about it. It hasn't bothered me too much, except I notice it a lot now because I'm trying to make a video and it's hard to concentrate with this stupid voice in your head. Alright, we've got an average here of 54 frames per second, and 1% and 0.1% lows are 40 and 41 respectively. Alright, now let's see what happens on the ultra preset. And we're back, and now we are on the ultra high preset. I'm not sure if that's supposed to mean that it's ultra high or a mixture between ultra and high, whatever. So let's just enable custom so we can see the settings here. So we've got ray traced shadows and ray traced ambient occlusion. The rest of the settings seem pretty much the same as on high. One or two things might have changed here, but let's see how it goes. I'm not holding my breath here purely because the Radeon cards are not really known for their strong ray tracing performance, and then pair that with an unoptimized piece of game and you'll be pretty disappointed. Right, but so far, I mean, we are getting above 30 frames per second at all times. We're not using FSR. That was a move I haven't seen before. So we're not using FSR at all, and to get 30 frames per second at all times, I think it's pretty good considering. Right. If you have a look at the game's system requirements, most of the lines there, or most of the requirements there, actually say that it's targeting 30 frames per second, which to me for a game in 2023 is unacceptable. I know this game was made for the console and then ported to PC, but that's definitely still no excuse for targeting 30 frames per second in 2023. I think devs are just lazy nowadays. You've got upscaling tech, and then you've got frame generation from Nvidia on their RTX 40 series cards. So I think devs are just a little bit lazier to optimize their games because they rely on other techniques to improve the performance. So far we've got an average of 39 or 1% lows and 0.1% lows, or 31 and 30 respectively, and that just once again shows that maybe direct storage 1.1 does have its advantages, especially when it comes to stuttering. But let's see what we need to do to get 60 frames per second with the ray tracing turned on. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to set that to custom, and then we'll start playing with the FSR. So quality, immediately it seems like we might be able to hit 60 frames per second. We might not be able to maintain it, but let's test it anyway. Right, there's quite a few frame rate drops there. Let's just reset the numbers again. This is quite an aggressive enemy. I haven't faced this one before, and down he goes. So once we get out of that valley once again into the foliage here, we are still dropping below 50 frames per second. Now, once again, I'm playing this game with a controller. It sounds like I play most of my games with controllers. Actually not. It's just easier for me to record because the PC I'm playing on is to my right, and the screen I'm facing, well, obviously it's directly in front of me, but it's just easier to play with the controller when I'm recording. But this game is pretty good with the controller, and once again, you don't really feel the input latency that much when you play with the controller. And actually, this is not terrible. The hair looks a little bit messy though. I'm not going to lie. That's just the FSR. Obviously, movement, the holes in her cape also looks a little bit fuzzy. It's not as detailed, but once again, we are obviously rendering at lower internal resolution, so we're not able to hit 60 frames per second. Let's see what we need to do. I'm just going to enable, let's go for FSR performance. I mean, we got nothing to lose here except visual fidelity. Let's just reset our numbers here, and as you can see in the valley here, it's doing pretty much the same thing. It drops from 70 frames per second to the high 50s, and down here in the forest area it drops to the mid 50s. It seems like the average is about 10% better, so you do gain a few frames just by enabling FSR. But now remember, this is on, what's it, performance or ultra performance? I can't even remember. So at this point it's performance. At this point, it's probably best just to play on the standard preset. That way you can still play on native resolution. You get the same performance, more or less, still getting around 60 frames per second, as you can see. And ray tracing is disabled and FSR is disabled, and the game is playable. Alright, so I'm just going to give you my recommended settings here. Select the standard preset, go into custom, then we'll just go down to fog and cloud quality. We can just lower that, and also lower the shadow quality. Right, so now we've got our standard preset just with a few settings that we changed, and there you can see we are actually now getting about 80 frames per second. Obviously we're standing still, but let me just show you here. If we up the fog quality, there goes 4-5 frames per second, and cloud quality, there goes another 10 frames per second. Right, so let's just disable this and disable that. Cloud quality, I don't think you'll notice it that much unless you like looking up in the air for no reason. And I think this should give us a stable 60 frames per second. I haven't tested it, but so far it looks pretty good. I mean, we got a pretty decent performance increase just by lowering the cloud quality, and it doesn't look terrible. Obviously, compared to other games, it doesn't look great. And unfortunately, down here in the foliage, the forest area, we are still dropping into the low 50s. At this point, if you enable FSR, you'll just lose quite a lot of the visual quality. And as I said, this is not a slouch of a GPU. It's a pretty decent 1080p GPU. And to not even be able to hit 60 frames per second constantly at a standard preset, it's a little bit disappointing. This game obviously needs a lot of work, and as I said, maybe the full game does perform a little bit better because it might have received an update or two by the time I'm making this video. The demo hasn't. Not sure if it's going to, but that's pretty much how it is at the moment. Alright, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, we hope to see you in the next one.